Favarial. Callist was denied even the feeble comfort of glaring at his interrogator, for his attention was fixed on the crossbows aimed at Liliana's back. I couldn't begin to tell you where in the district, and I can't even promise he's still there, but last we talked, he lived in Favarial. Semner nodded slowly and turned to the men in the doorway. She can go. Kill him. Liliana's eyes widened. Her lip quivered as though she had something to say, something she couldn't quite voice. 3 evil grins formed around and behind her, and 3 evil bolts shifted their aim to Callist's chest. Callist felt his heart race and his palms grow clammy, and then, as though doused with a bucket of snow, he cooled. He felt calm, collected. He'd faced worse situations. Hell, he'd subjected people to worse situations. Bad idea, Semner, he said, his voice level. I didn't think even you were that stupid. Curiosity warred with anger on the ugliest face in the room, and curiosity beat the stuffing out of it. Semner raised a hand, halting his men even as their fingers began to tighten on their triggers. Meaning what, exactly? Favarial's an awfully long way away, Callist told him. That's several days before you know for certain if I'm lying or not. Semner ground his teeth. Are you? No. A smile. As far as you know. Damn it, Roka. And what if he's left? Callist plunged on. Obviously, you found me more easily than you could find him, or we wouldn't be having this lovely heart-to-heart. He could be anywhere. He might not even be on Ravnica anymore. Of course, Semner wouldn't understand that. We may not talk anymore, but I still know the man a lot better than you do. If I'm lying, or if he's moved on, how do you plan to find him without me? The grinding in Semner's jaw grew to almost tectonic levels, but Callist had him, and he knew it. All right, the mercenary finally relented. You get to keep breathing. He gestured toward the chair he himself had occupied a few moments before. Tie her up. Make sure she's secure. What? Callist scowled. You just told your men to let her go. That was before you pointed out that I was being stupid. Semner smirked. One of the thugs departed to locate more rope. Semner turned toward those remaining. Eret, you and Rin stay here. Sleep in shifts. I want someone watching them at all times. I may not be a mage, he allowed, with a bitter glance at Callus, but I can hire people who are. Once we've reached Favarial, I'll find a messenger who can send you word, let you know if he told us the truth. And if he didn't, Semner added darkly, your job will be to scar the woman up good. Callist snarled in frustration. He was not, however, the only one present to take issue with that plan. Boss, the one named Eret interjected, his voice uncertain. You really want us to watch these two for days? Just the two of us? They'll be tied up. But, didn't you tell me they were witches? What if they put a hex on Ren or turn me into a gobber or something? Then you'll have a better chance of attracting women, Semner growled, though his expression had grown uncertain. You'll have to take us with you, Semner, Liliana taunted. All it takes is the right word, even the right look. There's no way your goons can keep the both of us confined for days. The hell they can't, he snarled back, grinning suddenly. Liliana winked at Callist, who had to struggle not to laugh out loud. Gag them, Semner ordered his men, and find something to blindfold them. That should keep them from casting, or aiming much of anything. And if not... Slowly he turned to Liliana, looking her lasciviously up and down. She shuddered. her skin crawling as though he'd actually run his hands across her body. Callist wished desperately for a knife, or even a piece of broken glass. One of them makes even the slightest suspicious move, Semner told Eret. Cut something personal and irreplaceable off the other. That should keep him in line. The door swung open, and the other returned, a coil of rope slung over one shoulder. He dripped profusely as he crossed the floor, and the sounds through the open doorway suggested that the steady drizzle had become an honest downpour. "Food?" Eret asked Semner as the man with the rope moved to the chair and began uncoiling his burden. "Water?" We'll only be 3 or 4 days. Won't kill them to go without food. Water, just soak the gags every few hours. Let them suck the water out of them. And if they have to relieve themselves?" Clearly he was still nervous about the notion of having an unrestrained mage in the room. Semner just grinned. "It'll cover the scent of Roka's vomit." Shoulders straight and head held high, Liliana strode across the room and sat in the chair herself, rather than allowing herself to be manhandled into it. Even as Eret and the woman, Rin presumably, began wrapping the ropes around her, her eyes locked on Callist's own. Slowly, deliberately, they drifted down to indicate the ropes and back up. Ever so slightly, he nodded in turn. Without the slightest hint of sound, Liliana's lips began to move. In a matter of moments, she was tied as thoroughly as Callist himself. Semner had offered them another handful of snide and threatening comments, and the house had slowly emptied out. All that remained now were 2 bound prisoners, 2 nervous captors, and the sound of the ever-increasing rain. A little knowledge, or so the saying goes, is a dangerous thing, and that's what Semner, undisciplined and unstudied as he was in the ways of magic, possessed. A little knowledge. If he'd known just a bit more, paid slightly better attention to the mages with whom he'd worked, or the few lessons he'd received, he might have known just how quickly simple magics could be worked, might have realized how thoroughly he was being played when Liliana intimated that binding and gagging would prove anything more than an inconvenience. The necromancer had rotted the ropes away to sludge before Semner had even departed the house, a fact concealed by Callist's own spell, a minimal phantasmagoria that made the bindings appear as solid as ever, even shifting and rustling with the captive's movements. And then they waited, the prisoners fidgeting, Eret nervously pacing the room, Rin digging around in the linens for viable gags and blindfolds. She finally settled on a few strips of bedsheet and the sleeves torn off an old tunic. Callist winced as the cloth was shoved in his mouth and draped over his head. Yet, even as the room vanished behind off-white linen, he allowed his body to go limp, his mind and his focus to sharpen, as he drew upon the mana of the wells and cisterns beneath the district's roads. Earlier, hungover and all but drowning in adrenaline, he couldn't make the spell work. But now he cast his sight out from his head. It felt, if anything, even easier than he'd anticipated. The ragged sheet seemed to draw near and then vanish as he surveyed the room from a spot several inches in front of his face. From there he watched and waited for Liliana to make the first move. The sound of the downpour faded, resuming the gentle background rustle of the night before. The shutters over the windows glowed faintly with the first stirrings of a bashful dawn. Eret actually uttered a startled squeak when Liliana stood up from her chair, doffed her bonds, and removed the makeshift hood and gag with contemptuous ease, offering him her most dazzling, seductive smile. and that was more than enough distraction for Callus to stand up and smash the thug over the back of the head with his chair. The sound didn't wake Rin, who had gone to sleep away ere its first shift. Thanks to the shadowy form that had lurked beneath the bed since the start of Liliana's chant, run its hideous limbs across the sleeping woman, and vanished once more into the ether, nothing would wake Rin ever again. "You certainly took your time," Callus said as he stepped across the bleeding, supine form, dropping his gag on the fellow's face, a cheap and contemptuous shroud. "We've been free for over an hour. I had to be sure Semner wasn't coming back, didn't I? Ah, smart thinking. And don't forget it." Callus couldn't help but smile. He stepped beside the woman he loved, even if he'd also felt, over the past evening, that he could learn to hate her, and reached out to embrace her. His heart fell to his toes when she retreated before him, until he remembered the state of his clothes. "New pants, I think," he suggested with a rueful grin. "I'd surely appreciate it." Callus moved to the bed, stopping long enough to stick a hand through the shutters, collecting a handful of rainwater with which he removed the worst of the blood from his face. "Are you all right?" he asked as he knelt, wincing, to dig through the lower half of the wardrobe. "They didn't hurt you, did they?" "Only what you saw, Callus." "I'm glad." He staggered and hopped his way around the room, trying to yank a clean pair of trousers over his legs even as he went about collecting certain vital items. "Who do you think hired Semner? Borakov? The consortium itself? Or maybe that Kamigawa shaman's also a walker?" "Does it matter?" Liliana bent down, wrapping the few remaining strands of solid rope around the splayed limbs of the unconscious thug. "If we sat here listing everyone who might want Jace dead, he'd die of old age before we finished and save them the trouble." "It matters," Callus said, teetering into the center of the room with an armload of traveling supplies, his scabbarded broadsword protruding from the heap. "It's going to impact how we run." "Run?" "If it's just the rat folk looking for a bit of payback, there's no reason to think you and I are in any further danger. But if the Infinite Consortium's hunting us again, we've got to put at least a few hundred leagues between us and our next home. One of the larger districts, do you think? Glahia, maybe. Not Favarial, for obvious reasons. Or maybe we could—" "Callist," Liliana said softly, laying a gentle hand across his arm, though he had no memory of her crossing the room. "Hush." He hushed. "We can't run," she told him seriously. "I've got a pack of supplies, and 2 fairly sturdy feet that say we can, actually. Why? We have to warn Jace." Callist's armload fell to the floor, the hilt of the sword landing hard enough on his foot that, had he not already put his boots back on, he might well have broken something. "Semner must have hit me harder than I thought," he told her. "Oh? I'm hallucinating. I actually imagined I heard you say we should go warn Jace." "Well, that's a mighty convenient hallucination then, since I did say we should go warn Jace. But at least I won't have to repeat myself." "You're insane. There's no way—" "Someone's got to, Callist. Liliana, Jace doesn't want to see us. And we don't want to see him," she agreed. "Precisely. Why ruin such a mutually satisfying agreement?" "Callist, he's never forgiven you, Liliana, and he's certainly never going to forgive me. And that, of course, is as good a reason as any to sentence the man to death. He ruined my life because he was trying to save it." A long pause as Callist glared at her, and then his shoulders drooped, the breath hissing through his teeth as it escaped. "Damn it." "Yeah." Callist slid down the wall to sit, arms on knees, beside the window. Liliana crouched next to him, 2 fingers running idly through his hair. "When did we start worrying about the right thing?" he asked hopelessly. I think about the time it started to involve someone who saved your life half a dozen times. A final deep sigh deflated Callist from the waist on up, but finally he nodded. All right, he said, and again, all right. Semner's got over an hour's head start, but it's pretty easy to get turned around in the streets and tunnels between here and Favarial. Even if not, if I hurry, I may still get there soon enough to find Jace before he does, assuming the bastard's even still in the district. By which, of course, you mean we, Liliana corrected, just the slightest coating of frost on her voice. Ah, Callist hedged, realizing just how deep was the mire he was about to step in. No, that's not exactly what I meant. Yes, it is. You just haven't had that fact explained to you yet. Liliana, he said, pulling his head from beneath her hand and standing straight once more. You shouldn't come. She rose, smoothly, swiftly, until her feet were inches from the floor, her body surrounded by a flickering aura of black mist. The arcane symbols once more inked across her back and neck. She hovered higher until she had to look down to meet Callist's gaze. Even knowing that she wasn't about to hurt him, he couldn't help but shiver at the blood-chilling, vampiric cold emanating from the necromancer. From within the midnight-tinted aura, he swore he heard the whispers and moans of a score of souls. Yet her tone, when she spoke, was calm, collected. She was, Callist realized with something akin to awe, simply making a point, not trying to intimidate him. Do you really think, she asked him, that waiting here in Avaric to find out if you've succeeded is the best use of my abilities? Do you really think you can convince me that it's a trip that you can make, but that it's somehow too dangerous for me? It had, of course, nothing whatsoever to do with danger. Callist just wasn't remotely certain he could stand spending 3 or 4 straight days with Liliana so soon after the crushing conversation of the previous evening. Callist, not being a complete idiot, knew better than to say so. Yes, I think it's too dangerous to risk both of us. Liliana laughed and sank until her feet once more touched the wooden planks, allowing the necromantic aura to fade. So it's safer for one of us than both? I thought I was supposed to be the illogical one. Liliana. Besides, she said lightly, flicking the tip of his nose with a finger, you'd be bored without me. Callist knew when he was beat. It seemed to be happening a lot lately. Fine, he grumbled with ill grace. Start packing up what you need. I've got one last thing to take care of. The humor instantly fell from Liliana's face. Would you rather I do it? She asked gently. Not even a little bit. Callist hefted his broadsword from the pile, allowing the scabbard to slide from the blade. Mechanically, he turned and strode across the room to stand above Eret. The bound thug, who'd regained consciousness at some point during their discussion, began to thrash. Wait a minute! Why? Callist's voice was as mechanical as his movements. There's no reason. Look, I'm no threat to you. I could even help you. Should have asked Semner exactly who it was you were dealing with. Callist brought the heavy blade down with a crash. Then, without a word, he turned away to wash the weapon clean, leaving the body to drain itself dry into the crevice he'd cleaved through the floorboards beneath it. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like or sharing this video with your friends. If you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, you'll be alerted whenever I upload new videos. If you have a topic you'd like me to discuss, feel free to let me know in the comments section below. Finally, if you'd like to support me directly, well, I've created a Patreon for this channel. If you like what I do and want to help me out, go check it out. A link to it will be in the description below. Thanks again, and have a great day.